Hi everyone, so today I'm going to be showing you how I do my cream contouring routine and the products that I use to do so. A lot of you requested for me to do this video and a lot of you asked me to do it in particular with the Makeup Revolution cream contour palette, so that's what I've done. It's nothing too complicated or too technical, it's literally just I'm going to show you how I do my cream contour and how I set it with my powder contour afterwards. So if you want to see how I do that and how I got this look, then please keep watching. Okay, so the palette that I'm going to be using today is the Makeup Revolution Ultra Cream Contour Palette, and I got this from Superdrugs. I think it was £8 or £9, I'm not too sure. And this is what it looks like inside. You've got all your contour shades and then your highlight shades. I don't really tend to use the highlight shades that much just because I prefer doing it with actual concealers, but I like the contour shades a lot. So my contour routine is a mixture between sculpting my face and cream bronzing. I don't really feel like I need to sculpt my face too much just because I don't think it looks good in natural lighting. I think contouring looks great in photos, but in real life it just can look a bit silly sometimes, so I don't like to go too heavy with it. So I don't like to do it too dark, and I feel like I do it more in a cream bronzer type of way, if that makes sense. You'll see what I mean when I do it. But I just feel like it adds a lot more dimension to the face and it just doesn't look as fake as when you contour. So I'm going to start by contouring my forehead. Now I've got quite a round face and it's quite wide and it's not too long, but I've still got quite a big forehead, so I do want to diminish the appearance of that. So I'm going to start by taking the two darkest shades, that's that one and this one. And I'm just using a fluffy brush. This isn't branded, any fluffy brush that you've got will do. And I like to swirl it around in those two dark shades. And then I'm just going to sweep that around my forehead. Now my hairline goes a little bit more up on this side, it's not even to the other side, so I like to take the contour shade higher on this side. Try and hide that a little bit. And I like to bring it onto my temples. Now for my cheekbones, I contour them a little bit differently to other people just because I've got quite prominent cheekbones as it is, so I don't want them to pop out too much because when I contour right there, it makes me look like I've had plastic surgery and I just don't like the way that looks. So instead of doing it there, which is where you'd usually do it if you really wanted to sculpt your face, I actually do it just a little bit above that. I always find that when I did it kind of in the hollows of my cheekbones, it just never looked right. It always looked muddy, it just didn't suit my face. So if you have that same problem, try drawing it just a little bit above the hollow of your cheekbone and see if that works out for you. So I like to join it from that line, and then here's the hollow right there. And I like to take it just a little bit above that. And I also like to bring it up a bit. Now this is the bit earlier where I was talking about cream bronzing. I like to have my cheekbones quite brown and bronze. I don't really like to be super sculpted under here and then have kind of white, really highlighted cheekbones. Like I just said, it doesn't look right on me. It makes me look like I've had way too much Botox in my cheeks and I do not like that. So by doing it this way, it just makes my face look a lot more natural and sun-kissed, and it just looks so much better. So it looks a little something like that. I'm doing it a little bit more dramatic just for the sake of the video because I want you to see what I'm doing. I know that you've seen me do it in all my other videos, but I don't feel like I ever really explain why I put it in the places that I put it, and yeah. So now we've got the cheekbones and the forehead done, and then I like to contour my jawline. I haven't got a super strong jaw. From the side it's not too prominent, which is annoying. So I like to kind of add a little bit more definition to that. So for that I'm going to take the darkest shade and I just bring it up here and all the way around. Now for my nose contour, I've never found a technique that works right for my nose. I've got a very bulbous nose and it's quite slanted to one side, and I've just never really found a technique for my nose that looks good, so I prefer to stay away from the nose contouring. I see a lot of people with quite large noses and they do the whole dark shade down either side, light in the middle, and it just makes your nose look so much bigger and it's just not good. I feel like if you've got a larger nose than most and you haven't found a contouring routine that works perfectly for you, then I'll probably just avoid it altogether. But saying that, I do like to highlight my nose, and I don't want my nose to look too washed out. So what I do for my nose is I've cleaned off my brush, and I like to take this brown shade. This is more of a cool tone brown, and it's going to look a lot better on your nose. You really don't want to use warm tone browns on your nose. It's just going to look muddy and it's going to look weird. And then basically I just draw a thin line down either side of my nose, and all that does is just makes it look a little bit more natural and adds a bit more colour. I'm not doing it to make my nose look thinner, it's literally just to make my face look normal. And you can barely even see it. See, not even noticeable. So now that that's all done, most people will put their contour shade on and then put their highlight shade on straight afterwards, but I prefer to do my contouring first and then my highlighting afterwards. So once all this is on, I like to blend it out. I just think it's much easier if you've got your contour and your highlight shades on your face all at once. When you're blending it out, it can get quite messy. And I remember I used to watch so many contouring videos when I wasn't really sure what I was doing, and people are great at explaining where to put it and how to put it on, but they're never great at explaining how to blend it out, and I feel like that's the most important part. So if you've got all these different light and dark colours on your face and you're trying to blend them out, it's going to look messy eventually, and it's just going to look muddy and it's going to look weird. So what I like to do is I like to take this Real Techniques, what is this? This is a sculpting brush, it's the angled one, and I personally prefer to use this to blend out my contour rather than, say, a beauty blender. I just have a lot more control over where I'm blending it out, and I just think it works better. So try using a brush like this if you have trouble really blending out your contour. And I also like to spray the brush with a little bit of MAC Fix Plus. And then I like to start on the forehead, and I'm just doing it super lightly, and I'm blending it outwards. The reason I like doing this so much is because I've got really dry skin, and I feel like using cream products to bronze just makes my skin look so much better, and it makes it look less dry, and it really adds a lot of dimension to my face. I feel like when I use powders, it just doesn't look as good and my face looks a little bit more flat. So I like to use creams because it adds a nice shine, it makes my skin look nice and dewy, so I just prefer that. So I'm really lightly just kind of buffing that outwards. I'm not doing this, just taking a really light hand. You could do this with a beauty blender if you wanted to, but I just feel like this is much easier. Then onto my cheekbones, and I just kind of really lightly do little circular motions. And I like to bring it up onto my cheekbones because, as I said, I like to do it for more of a bronzing thing rather than sculpting. And out my nose, and I just like to tap for this. And then for my jawline, I do literally just rub. I'm not too light-handed with this because I want it to blend. I don't want to have a really harsh line around my jaw that's not sexy. So now that's all pretty much blended out, and the reason I do that first is so if it does get a little bit too muddy and it does look a little bit messy, I can then correct it with my highlighting, so that's why I do my highlighting afterwards. So you can use the highlight shades out of the palette if you want to, but I find them to be just a little bit too thick for me. I prefer to do it with concealers. But the best thing about this palette is that it's so creamy and it's so easy to blend out, and it's just super cheap, which is always a bargain. Right, as I said, I don't really like to use the highlight shades out of the palette. I prefer to use concealers, and I like to use two different concealers. These are my favourite ones at the minute. They're drugstore, so that's great. They're both from Maybelline. And I just haven't really found any of the concealers that I feel like do a good enough job. So until then, I'm going to have to keep using these, I'm sorry. So for under my eyes, I like to use the Maybelline Fit Me Concealer. Mine's in the shade 10, and I like to put this just on my under eye area in a little triangle. And then to highlight the rest of my face, like my forehead and my nose, etc., I like to use the Maybelline Age Rewind, and this is in the shade light as well, I think. And I like both of these because they're quite yellow based, and I have very yellow skin, so it just suits me. A lot of concealers I find are quite pink, and they just don't really look right on me. So I love these two. These are my two favourites to use, and they're so easy to blend out. It just makes life so much easier. So I'm going to take the Maybelline Fit Me first, and I'm just going to put it on my under eyes. And then I use my Age Rewind concealer, and I like to highlight my chin because, as I said before, I haven't got the strongest jawline or chin. My chin's quite small, so I want to highlight it and bring it out. So all the areas that you're highlighting with your highlighters, you want to draw more attention to, and you want it to pop out and slap people in the face, and those are the areas that you want just to bring more attention to. All the areas that you contour are kind of the areas that you just want to be sucked in and to kind of fade into the background a little bit. So then I like to just do a line down my nose, and I also like to do just this tiny part of my forehead. And I also like to bring it around my nose and under here, and to neaten up the contour that I did earlier, I also like to take it right underneath my cheekbones, and it just sharpens them up a little bit more. I also like to bring it up the sides of my nose. It makes your nose look a lot thinner, so it looks a little something like this. Looks pretty crazy, but it'll look good in a minute. So for this part, I do use a beauty blender. I feel like nothing blends out concealer as well as beauty blenders do. Now I've got a actual beauty blender, just the black one. I don't know why, but I prefer the black one. I feel like it does a better job. And then I've got this Real Technique sponge. I think it's called, is it the complexion sponge? I'm not sure, but this is like £5 or £6 I think, and these are about 17, so expensive, but whatever, they're the same thing, they're just a different shape, so it's just whatever you prefer. I think it's good to have a lot of these. I don't like to use the same one every day, so I like to mix them up each day. So for today, I think I'm gonna use my trusty beauty blender. I'm gonna give it a spray with some Fix Plus again. The Fix Plus just helps everything kind of blend together a little bit more better. It doesn't set it, it just helps to blend it. So then I always start on my chin usually, I don't know why, it's just habit. And you just want to pat, you don't want to swipe because you're going to drag the product too much. So I just like to pat, and that way it kind of keeps it in that area. And then I go onto my under eyes. And again, I try and keep it in the exact area that I put it, I don't want to drag it down too much. So then once I'm 100% done with all the cream products, I like to set it all with a powder. Really just keeps it in place and it won't budge all day. Obviously, if you plan on using cream highlighters or anything like that, then I suggest you do that now. Never use a cream product over a powder product, it just is going to look so cakey and weird. So make sure you've got no creases under your eyes, because if you set it with the creases in place, it's going to set the creases and that's not going to look sexy. So my favourite powder to set with, as you will probably know, is the Laura Mercier Translucent Setting Powder, and this is by far the best one I've ever used. It's so silky, I just love it. It's a little bit on the pricey side, but I did say in my last video that I found a dupe for it, and that is the Collection Sheer Loose Powder. This is pretty much identical and it's a fraction of the price. I'm pretty sure it's only £1 or £2, so that's an absolute bargain. I like to tap some out into the lid. So usually around that much. And then I'm going to take my same beauty blender and I'm just going to kind of swoosh it in there. So it looks like that. And then I'm going to set my under eyes first. And just go back and keep getting more product however much you want. So now that that's all on and it looks a little cray-cray, I just like to push it in a little bit more, and then I like to wipe away any of the excess powder. So now that all the highlight is set in place with the powder, I like to do the same with my contour. And I'll either use my Anastasia powder contour kit, this one's in light to medium, or I like to use a matte bronzer. This one's from Rimmel and this is 025 Sun Glow. This is just their natural bronzer. It's completely matte, it's got no shimmer in it. I don't like to use bronzers that have got shimmer in it. It just defeats the whole purpose of you know, bronze in those areas. It's going to draw more attention if you've got the little glittery speck things in them. So I'm actually going to use both today just to show you. So with my Rimmel bronzer, I like to apply it using a duo fibre brush. This one's from MAC. It's the, I can't find it. It's the 187 SE. It's just a small one. It was, I think it's part of one of their holiday collections. And I like to swish it around, tap off the excess on the lid, and I like to gently set all those areas that we did the cream highlighting. The reason I like to use this brush is it's just a little bit more natural, and sometimes if you use a denser brush, it kind of packs the product all into one area and it just doesn't look that great. So I like this because it blends it out nicely. So I either use the Rimmel bronzer or I use my Anastasia contour kit. It doesn't really matter, it just depends what's closest and whatever I reach for first. But I'm going to use the contour kit as well. And my favourite shade to use is this one. I think this one is Havana. I like it just because it's a little bit more warm. But if I were to be sculpting out my face and I wanted a really tight sculpted contour and I didn't want to go for the bronzy look, then I'd use this cool tone brown. I think this is Java, I'm gonna say. I don't know. So I'm actually gonna take a little bit of that cool tone brown on this Real Techniques brush, and I'm just lightly putting it on the tip of the brush. And then I'm gonna suck it in my face and put it right in the hollows of my cheeks. The reason I like to use this brush is because although I'm only putting product right on the tip, it's so fluffy that it blends out the edges as I go along, so it pretty much does the work for me. So I like to go quite heavy with my bronzer. I think it suits my face. I do use quite a lot of products, but that's just what I like for me personally. You don't have to use as much and you don't have to go as heavy as you don't want to. Obviously, this isn't something I do every day. I just don't have the time to do that. On a daily basis, I'll usually just put on a bit of powder bronzer and I'm good to go. But on the days I want to make a little bit more effort, I do really like to do the cream contouring. Like I said, I just think it looks really good. So this is what it looks like once it's all done. It just brings a little bit more life to my face and makes me look a little bit more awake. And it's a lot more natural than going for the really bold, heavy, kind of sculpted contour where you just have pretty much lines down the side of your face. I just think this is a little bit more natural and wearable, and it's more achievable for every day. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish the rest of my face and then I will be back in a jiffy. Okay, so now I've finished all the rest of my face and all I did was add a little bit of blush and highlighter, and obviously did my lips. And I feel like when I wear the cream contour type of bronzing thing, adding a highlighter like this just brings the look together so much. I really like this whole glowy bronzy look for summer. I think it looks so good, and it's just a really nice way to add a little bit of colour to your face without it being too extreme, I guess. Well, it's not extreme for me, it might be extreme for you, but whatever. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful in any way. I know I didn't go too much into detail just because it's really not that complicated and it's super easy. And I know you see it in all my other videos, but a lot of you requested for me to do this video with the Makeup Revolution kit in particular, so that's what I did for you guys. Please let me know in the comments any other videos you'd like to see from me and I will do that. And I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up and I'll see you all next time. Bye!